You, Donald. Thank you, Donald. Good evening, everybody. Well, today, an article in the Times newspaper did rather catch my eye, as it's done much of the media. Written by Justine Greening, the former Education Secretary, and she describes a situation in which politics, Parliament, is deadlocked, and she says she's trying to find another solution. She wants another referendum, but it's not the same as the Soros-backed People's Vote, the one headed up by Alistair Campbell and others, because what they want is to have a referendum on Theresa May's deal or to stay in the European Union. Though Justine Greening has got a radically different idea. Here she was, speaking this morning on Sky News.
I think Brexit has to be above party politics, and what needs to come first is not any political party, but what's right for the country. We need to recognise that Parliament is now stalemated on a way forward on Brexit. If it's the Prime Minister's deal, I believe that will not be supported and it will be voted down. If it's a proposal on a no deal, that will be voted down. All Parliament can do is block a route forward. And I think if that's the case and that's the reality, then the only way we can find a path forward is to go back to the British people and ask them to take the decision.
Well, she maybe has a point about Parliament being deadlocked. I thought that was very interesting. On the BBC, she went further.
I think I'm just calling it like I see it. Parliament's deadlocked. I think this deal keeps no one happy and Parliament won't support it. I also think Parliament won't support a no-deal scenario. And so we're left with Westminster unable to get behind any route forward, which is why I think in that case you then have to give that decision back to the British people and put it in their hands.
So what is Justine Greening's proposal?
I think they need to choose between, in practice, the three alternative routes we have. One is a soft Brexit, that's the Prime Minister's deal. One is a proper clean break, which is a hard Brexit, and I think listening to the Leave voters in my own community, that's what they want. They wanted a clean break from the European Union. Or, of course, the third route is that we could stay in the European Union. I'm saying those are the three paths forward for our country in practice. People should be allowed to choose between them. And the way they should do that is to have two votes. They can vote for their first choice, and then they can vote for the option going forward that if they don't get the first choice is the next best one for them.
Well, it's all well and good. Trouble is, Justine, we had that referendum back in 2016. We made our decision. We voted to take back our independence. And the reason we're in this mess, the reason Parliament's deadlocked, is because Parliament has not caught up with where the people of this country are. Over 400 constituencies that voted Leave, only 150 MPs that support the Leave campaign. So there is a very, very big problem there. And who's to say, Justine, that if we have a second referendum and we vote to leave again, who's to say Parliament will listen the next time round? That is part of the problem I have with it. But I do think she's right with her analysis that Parliament is deadlocked, and it may come down to the people having their say again. But I wonder, does it need to be a second referendum, or could it be another general election? I want to know what you think on this. If you think, yep, actually she's right, this actually is the only way, and unlike the People's Vote campaign, at least she's been honest enough to give us the three options. And by the way, I met her in the corridor this morning, and I said, I don't agree, Justine, with the second referendum, but at least you've given the true options available to us. So I give her some credit for that. If you think she's right, call me on 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think she and the rest of our political class need to simply get over it. It's finished. The war is over. Text to 84850. Or maybe you've got yet another idea, in which case you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. You can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. And breaking news, Ken Clarke. Yes, he, Tory, now backbench veteran, held virtually every senior position in government, bar that of Prime Minister. Ken Clarke, very, very much a pro-EU supporter, wanted us to join the euro. He has just backed Mrs May's Chequers deal, which tells me all I need to know. It is the pro-EU Remainers that are backing the Chequers deal. Let's go to Paul, who's calling from Brecon in mid-Wales. What do you think about Justine Greening's ideas, Paul?
Well, I think part of the analysis is correct, but I think her conclusion is totally wrong. That, as you say, the people have already voted.
Yeah.
It's just that the Parliament can't get its act together. But this Chequers deal isn't going to be accepted by the EU anyway. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And there's no chance at all. And the other thing is, there's a constitutional matter here. This is the result of Ollie, the civil servant.
Ollie Robbins, yeah.
Yeah, and getting together. And basically, we've been trounced. I've been misled. I thought we had a Brexit department. We didn't. What we had was a secret civil service department working with the Prime Minister to get the Chequers deal and bounce it on the Brexit department.
Do you see the Prime Minister, Paul?
Pardon?
Do you see the Prime Minister's role in this as having been deceitful?
Totally. I was at a meeting or a dinner the other night with Rees Mogg, and I'll tell you what, the mood there, and I don't belong to any party, but I was invited along and I went along. I had some questions and so on, but he is so popular in the party, and I'm telling you now, everyone was trashing May. I mean, she has completely lost the base of her own party.
So why, Paul, are there only somewhere between 38 and 40 letters in when 48 are required to trigger a motion of confidence in her?
Very simple, because of timing. I mean, it's to do with the timing. I've always understood why, if you start to have a 3-month election now for the leader, right in the negotiations, that's going to be very, very difficult. And also, who would get in, given the existing mood? So I'm on the Brexit side very strongly. But given that, there are restrictions. The only reason she's there is by sheer bad luck of the timing. She has put this country, into a terrible bargaining position.
Isn't she there because of Michael Gove? Isn't she there because Gove stabbed Boris in the back? Otherwise, Boris would have won it.
Yeah, and I'm surprised. Yeah, that's right. And I'm surprised that Gove now is backing it. And I know, I can't believe that.
I tell you what, Paul, I've got more on Michael Gove in the course of this next hour, where he recants on even campaigning on immigration during the referendum. It is quite unbelievable. Oh, yes. Wait for it, Paul. 7:30. I'll tell you all about it. Thanks for your call. Now, Neil in Leigh-on-Sea raises a very important question. He says, I'm hearing that those in favour of a second referendum now want 3 choices on the ballot paper: accept the deal, no deal, or remain. This is a clever way to keep us in the EU, because leavers will be split between options 1 and 2, meaning remainers would only need around about 40% to win. Neil, the detail of this is, as Greening sees it, we have those 3 choices, but we have a first vote and we have a second vote. We have a second preference vote, so that one of them will be over 50%. One of them will win. So I'm not actually certain in a referendum like this that Remain would win. In fact, I think some form of leaving probably would win, but who's to say? So, there is a second preference vote under the Greening proposal. Andrew is calling from Lincoln. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening, Nigel.
So,
good to speak to you.
Are you excited about a second referendum, Andrew?
I'm absolutely incandescent about it, Nigel, to be quite truthful.
Right.
We had a referendum. We were told exactly what we were voting for. We knew what we were voting for. And we gave May a mandate to implement what we voted for. It isn't hard, soft. It's exactly what we voted for with our red lines.
So who's let you down, Andrew? Is it Mrs May that's let you down above all?
Sorry, I missed that.
So is it Mrs May that's let you down?
It's Mrs May and the Remainers. They refuse to accept what we voted for. They're talking about hard and soft Brexits.
Yeah.
There's only one Brexit. We gave the Conservative Party and all the MPs our red lines, and they're just that. They're red lines. They are not to be broken, interfered with, or messed about with. That is what we say. The decision was given to us because the MPs couldn't make a decision, and we made that decision, and it was exactly what we wanted, and we know. We don't need another referendum. It was all decided in that first referendum. The only problem, and the only messing about, is because of 2 reasons. The Remainer MPs make the government look weak, and hinders our bargaining positions, and the fact that the EU will not give us what we want. How much they negotiate, they will not give us it, because it opens the door for all the other countries.
Andrew, I understand.
We leave with WTO terms and pay nothing. Because
I understand. Well, it would be
nearest deal to what we voted for.
It'd be great fun, Andrew, to get you and Justine Greening together. Unfortunately, we can't broker that, but thank you. Nigel, yes, we should have one final referendum. Brexit voters only to decide deal or no deal. Well, that's a non-starter. Justine Greening is being anti-democratic just because certain politicians are hypocrites and go against their words. The people have spoken, says Chris in Manchester. Well, fine, Chris. The people have spoken, but she does make a fair point that Parliament is deadlocked. We are going to have to find somehow a way out of this. And I can see what's going to happen here. You know, there is no basic agreement on the Chequers deal. And when we do go back with something to Monsieur Barnier, he will play for time. We are facing a crisis in September as voices will start to say it's impossible to meet the deadline of October to get a proper deal. We have a major, major problem. On Twitter, the people have already decided. No need to decide twice on the same issue. Yes, I agree with all of you, but Parliament is deadlocked. We do have a problem. I think I've got a way forward to this, but for now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC, and it's 7:15. Well, Justine Greening thinks that Parliament's deadlocked. We need another referendum, but we need to have three options, and that is accept the deal, leave, or remain. I'm asking you, ultimately, is this decision going to have to be given back to the people if Parliament can't sort it out? I don't want a second referendum. I think there's a better way of doing it than a referendum. But before I get back to that, Michael Gove, who played such a prominent role in the referendum campaign, has been interviewed and given quotes in a book that is coming out later this week called Control, Alt, Delete. And it's written by a guy called Tom Baldwin, who was a very senior advisor to Ed Miliband. And in it, Gove, who was accused of employing sort of UKIP-style rhetoric during the referendum. Michael Gove says in this book that actually it was wrong to talk about Turkey and Turkish accession and the fact the population could rise by 5 million due to immigration by 2030, that if he'd had complete control over this, the campaign would have had a different feel to it. And he goes on to say that he's very pleased that now, because we've had the referendum, we have the most liberal attitudes on immigration of any country in Europe, that the referendum had taken the sting out of the argument. Very good, Michael. You can now be invited to every posh dinner party in Notting Hill. You've decided that immigration is not an issue. It's all gone away. But you've just basically confessed to the British people that you talked about the issue that was closest to their hearts without actually meaning it. Doesn't get top marks in my book, I have to say. Let's go to James in Coventry. James, do we need a referendum to sort out the parliamentary mess?
Well, I'm so exasperated at the moment, Nigel, and I'd probably say yes, because...
Would you?
I'm one of these non-existent mid-20s Brexit voters, because it was all over 60s.
Right.
But basically, look at the Tory party, and I only, maybe except for Rees-Mogg, see careerists. I look at the Labour Party and just completely, that's gone, a bit loopy. And then I look at the UKIP party and they seem to have veered to the alt-right. So I don't see any other way of finalising this issue and getting what we want without voting, because it just seems like they're not going to do it. Theresa May has watered it down far too much.
All right, so you think if we had a second referendum, but what if we have it, James, and they ignore us again?
That's the thing, but the only problem is I went out and voted. I truly believe that this was good for the future. It's not it is about getting sovereignty, but also believe there's opportunities. I'm a positive thinker about it, and that's who we need in charge. But the problem is, you vote Conservative, you vote Labour, you vote UKIP. UKIP ain't going to get in. Labour and Conservative both aren't going to give us what we want, because Jeremy Corbyn has flip-flopped on his policies because of his EU backers. And then you've also got, the Conservative Party with basically Remainers.
At some point, Labour's split on this is going to be revealed. Large swathes of the old Labour vote in South Wales, the Midlands and the north of England voted Leave and did so because they meant it. But for the minute, he's off the hook on this. It's the Conservatives that are having to face these questions. James, if I thought that a second referendum, and we won it again with a Leave vote, would finish it off, I might be tempted to agree with you. I just worry they might ignore us again. But James, I get your frustration. Thank you very much indeed. Tina says on Facebook, the question Remainers should answer is, what does Remain look like when it could mean we totally submit to the EU? Well, Tina, the other question is, what will the EU look like in a few years' time? I mean, I sat next to Jean-Claude Juncker last year giving his State of the Union speech. It's a European army by 2025. It's a foreign policy without veto. That's the direction they want to go in. And yet it's falling about around their ears with Hungary, Poland, Italy, Sweden, and even in Germany. You know, the Alternative for Deutschland now second in the opinion polls. John says, no, we don't want a second referendum. It will create even more division. If we had a competent government, the question would not even arise. Yeah, but John, we don't have a competent government. We have a leader who's pretending to deliver Brexit, but actually now picking up the support of people like Ken Clarke. Linda is calling from Chelsea. Good evening, Linda.
Yes, I was just calling because I have a website and I've tried to set up a petition along the lines of a referendum, although I'd be pleased to hear what you're going to suggest later on.
Yep.
But my thought was, because I thought that this issue, that having three options might come up, which I think would be disastrous. And my idea was that we have a referendum, which would be held in October maybe. There would have to be quite a rush issue. But it would be an option that we accept Mrs May's deal or we exit on WTO rules. So that, we've already had this referendum, so it's not rerunning the old referendum. The Remainers can have their Mrs May's deal, although that seems to be collapsing at the moment. But, we also have this more decisive Brexit, not a hard Brexit, but a decisive Brexit, that we're just out.
Yeah, I mean, Linda, that sounds fine, but of course there are more MPs would support we accept the deal or we stay in.
The MPs might.
The MPs accept or reject the deal. I mean, that's the referendum they want. So I understand what you're...
is that maybe there is some way, if we kept pushing it, that it was on those, because everybody's saying, the people have made their decision, which we have. So they would still be, and everybody wants to say they're honouring the referendum result, and this gives them away. They're still honouring it. We're not going over the old issue. Yep. I don't think this Remain deal would work. And
Logic, Linda says you're right. We voted to leave, we're leaving, but the public get a final say on exactly the terms upon which we leave. Logic says you're right, Linda, but I'm not sure Parliament is ever going to give you that choice. Thank you, though. It's an entirely sensible suggestion, and it would be consistent, of course, with the manifestos of both parties at that last general election. Mike is calling from Hemel Hempstead. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, Nigel. Good evening, Nigel. How's yourself? Right?
Yeah, fine. I mean, frustrated, but fine.
Yeah, frustrated not the word. Frustrated not the word. I hold in a lot with what the last lady said.
Yep.
Now, the wild card here is Jeremy Corbyn. Now, Labour can sing and dance and bounce along the fence as long as it wants, but ultimately, Jeremy Corbyn wants to launch a renationalisation programme. He simply cannot do it if we remain anything part of the EU. We have to break away from the EU for him to do that. Yep. So Labour, under him, would have to support a clean Brexit. Now, that's the thing that's in our favour. Not that I'm wanting a Labour government, but sometimes you have to sleep with the devil to get what you want.
Yeah, but the trouble is, Jeremy Corbyn himself may support Brexit, but his parliamentary party don't.
No, but then there's enough on the left that will support him and drive it home. I mean, the middle and the centre and right wing of the Labour Party are rapidly losing ground to momentum, which is in some ways worrying, but from a Brexit point of view, it could be comforting.
Well, yeah, but you see, the thing is, momentum and not the old Bennite left. The old Bennite left. Oh, no. The old Bennite left. Whatever my disagreements may have been on economics or trade union laws, the old Bennite left were fiercely patriotic. I mean, the late Bob Crow, bless him. Bob and I did lots of programmes together, debates together, and when it came to the EU, immigration, defence, and a whole load of issues, we got on like a house on fire. I don't see that with momentum. I see momentum as being more sort of Trotskyist and wanting to basically use the European Union as a model for global government.
Absolutely, they're a nasty bunch of swine. You don't want that.
I'm sure there's some lovely people in momentum as well, Mike.
There probably are, but the ideology of it is is worrying.
I don't think, Mike, momentum are going to help us in this at all.
I don't think so.
No, I don't. Mike, I thank you. Going to move on. Matthew in Heathrow, what's your view on Justine Greening's proposal?
Well, hi, Nigel. Yeah, I do think we need another referendum, but it's just for the people in Northern Ireland, because until we solve the Northern Ireland issue, so basically we've got to know if they now still want to remain part of the EU, or they'll accept the white paper and have the border on the North Sea, and basically the rest of the UK, I think, will then have to go to WTO, what will then give the Brexit what the majority of people voted for.
So you think the Northern Irish should have a choice as to whether they have a separate constitutional position to the rest of the UK?
Well, yeah, that's the only way. I mean, we're going to get the Brexit to work the way, the majority of the people. I'm a Remain accepted. We're going to leave. But if we do want to do proper free trade deals with the rest of the world, we do need the WTO as a base, and then we can negotiate special deals, hopefully with Europe and with the US.
I'm not sure, Matthew, that Northern Ireland would like to be singled out in this way.
Well,
and if we did that, the Scots would ask for another vote. Maybe the Welsh Assembly, maybe not, would ask for another vote. I'm not sure it's the right route. I really am not sure it's the right route, Matthew.
I mean, the Brexit won't work. It will end up, but no deal is not an option. The no deal is we just stay in. So,
well, yes, I mean, no deal. With no deal, do we leave automatically or do we stay in? That is the great debate, and Brexiteers and Leavers can't agree. Matthew, I thank you very much indeed for that. Peter's got very strong views on Facebook. No to any referendum. We've had it, and the Queen has signed it into law. Yes, but Parliament doesn't really agree. Now, my view on all of this is we will not get anything like the Brexit we voted for if Theresa May stays as Prime Minister. That's clear. The best thing that could happen is they get rid of her, they get a Brexit leader who goes across to Brussels and says, look, we're very reasonable people, we're prepared to compromise, but there are 2 or 3 key issues that we need to have. We must have back proper control of our borders, and we must be in control of making our own laws. If Brussels reject that, we give them notice that we will be leaving and trading under World Trade Organization rules. We return. The Prime Minister returns to the House of Commons, who then reject that. The Prime Minister then goes to the country and says, your Brexit vote is being betrayed by the political class in Westminster. I ask you for your authority to deliver it, and they win the referendum with a very big majority, because the people out there who voted Brexit are desperate for this to happen. I think it may well be that the people have to have their say to settle this, but it can be done in a general election by having a Prime Minister who is a committed leaver, not a Remainer who pretends she now wants Brexit to happen. Tell me if you agree with that. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It is now 7:30, and Justine Greening wants a second referendum. Hers is more complicated than the previous ideas. Her one is to have 3 choices. The deal, i.e. Chequers or whatever it may in the end be, remain or leave, with everybody having a second preference vote. Matt in Sidcup says, yeah, the trouble is they'll all put Chequers as their second preference, and it will end up as the Chequers deal. Well, Matt, it's difficult to say at this stage whether people would even use their second preference votes. But hey, that's her formula. It's not mine. I think it needs a strong Prime Minister to go to Brussels, and if Parliament rejects what a strong British Prime Minister does, put it to the people and you'd win by a country mile and settle it once and for all. That is my view. Now, in the presidential campaign back in 2016, one of many commitments that Donald Trump made was an attempt to try to improve relations with Russia. And to that end, of course, he's been in Helsinki. This is the last leg of the tour that he's been on. And Putin and Trump have held a joint news conference in Helsinki. The Russian leader told reporters the Cold War is over and that America and Moscow need to solve problems together. Trump was questioned, of course, about the allegations concerning Russian meddling in the American election. Here he is.
There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. So far that I know, virtually none of it related to the campaign. And they're going to have to try really hard to find somebody that did relate to the campaign. That was a clean campaign. I beat Hillary Clinton easily, and frankly, we beat her, and I'm not even saying from the standpoint, we won that race and it's a shame that there can even be a little bit of a cloud over it. People know that, people understand it, but the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion, and it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
And further about the allegations, this is what Trump said about the lack of evidence.
Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server. But I have confidence in both parties. I really believe that this will probably go on for a while, but I don't think it can go on without finding out what happened to the server.
Well, of course, the Mueller investigation in America has been going on now for over a year. As yet, the only thing I think that's been uncovered is that some Russians spent $100,000 on some Facebook adverts. That in a campaign in which many hundreds of millions of dollars were spent. Now, President Putin decided he would use other examples of where real foreign meddling and collusion had happened in elections. And I think you might have heard this argument from me once or twice before.
I've brought some examples already. You have many people, including with those multi-billion fortunes, Mr. Soros, for example, who interferes everywhere. But is that the position of the American government? That's a private individual.
Now, no doubt, because President Putin has talked about Soros in much the same terms that I have, no doubt we will hear from Carol Cadwalladr in The Guardian that I'm even deeper in the pockets of the Russians. But it is a fact. Whilst everybody is scrabbling around trying to prove a conspiracy theory that the Russians interfered in Brexit or the election of President Donald Trump, meanwhile, George Soros' Open Society has already spent $15 billion pushing its aims, including significant funding for the campaign in this country to have a second referendum. By the way, Mr. Soros is not funding, to my knowledge, Justine Greening's campaign, but he is funding the other one. So there we are. And Trump is being condemned by his opponents. One or two have said it's treasonous that he's criticised his own intelligence agencies and the Mueller investigation and not the Russians. This one was always going to be tough for Trump. If at the end of the meeting he appeared to be getting on with President Putin, they were always going to say, that's proof of meddling and collusion. And interestingly, when Putin was asked whether he wanted Trump to win the election, he said, yes, I did, because I thought we'd have a more constructive relationship. And I just would say this, folks, surely isn't the ultimate sanity test, do you want these two great nuclear powers to get on or not? I think I know what my answer to that is. Graham is calling from Thamesmead, and he's going to tell me whether Justine Greening has got it right or wrong.
My answer to you, Nigel, is there is a fourth solution.
Right, I'm all ears.
Right, and the fourth solution is the Queen of England doing exactly what she did in 1975 when she sent a message to the Governor-General in Australia and shut down the Parliament. Dismissed the Parliament and said, basically, you are corrupt, end of, we're finishing this, let's have new elections. And that is what they did in 1975. It was called the Great Dismissal.
Yeah, I remember that, absolutely. And some in Australia still use that when they're arguing for Australia to become a republic. Graham, let's say the Queen had the power to do this and did this, right?
Well, she does have,
okay.
But carry on.
I'm not fighting you. Okay, let's say she does this, right? And we have fresh elections. And,
yes.
and Mrs. May says, vote for me. I will give you back control of your borders, laws and money. And we don't believe her. And we finish up with another hung parliament. What would that have achieved?
My answer to you, Nigel, is very simple. We need something called a constitutional audit. We've gone so far away from the Constitution in this country, and that's why I love President Trump so much. He's taking back America to the roots, to the conservative roots of that country, which is the rule of law. And this country and America has moved away from the rule of law. It's become corrupt. Politics is corrupt. And the only person that can sort this country out now is the most powerful woman in the world, which is the Queen of England.
I don't think she can sort it out, Graham, at all. I don't think it will be sorted out until one of the leaders, or both of the leaders...
I think you've got Gerard Batten. He's the closest to a constitutionalist that I've seen. It's the only reason now that I would vote for Gerard Batten.
Well, Gerard Batten is leader of UKIP, and UKIP are up in the polls in the course of the last week, but not on the verge of forming a government. Graham, I thank you very much indeed. Hi, Nigel. I wonder if there would be a second referendum if Remain had won. Yes, there would have been, maybe in 40 or 50 years, if we were very, very lucky. Those that believed in Leave would have gone on making the arguments, but there would not have been a cat's chance in hell of this even being on the agenda. Chris is calling from Richmond. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Nigel. I actually want to refer you back to something you said a few minutes ago. You were being quite dismissive about Carol Colowadler. You had Steve Bannon on for 2 hours yesterday, Aaron Banks on, and Andy Whitmore a few weeks ago. I want you to tell people right here, right now, why you refuse shut down Carol Colowadler.
Oh, well, look at page 42 of today's... Chris, look at page 42 of today's Guardian. You see yet another retraction and apology, for something that has been gotten wrong. OK, let's move on with this. Putting a second preference vote won't help. Leave and Remain are both going to put checkers... Several of you are saying this. Several of you are saying that, in fact, through this formula, the checkers deal would win. But it wouldn't necessarily. The fact you've got a second preference, they couldn't make you use it. So one of those options could emerge as top, even if it was considerably below 50%. Dan is calling from Dorset. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Nigel, how are you?
I am well. So... how are we going to solve this mess?
Well, I'm a Remainer. I voted Remain in the last referendum.
Yep.
But if I was Nigel Farage, I'd be pumped about this. I don't think you can lose, mate.
Right.
The checkers thing, it was really just designed to legitimise the idea of a second referendum. I think it doesn't please anybody. It could exist in real life, but it's not got a lot going for it apart from that. So you're left with the two other options. Leave on a no deal, which obviously would please you, or Remain, which gives UKIP a very large and very angry constituency to pitch at, and could quite feasibly catapult Mr. Farage into number 10.
Well, that's possible, Dan. I mean, if the Leave vote was reversed in a second referendum, but not by a huge margin, and we didn't leave the European Union, yes, there would be the possibility for UKIP to be an enormous political party. But Dan, I think you may just misunderstand my motives. My motives in politics were never about rank or position. My motives in politics were to change the country and to get us back to being an independent, self-governing nation. So, Dan, I do get your point. And indeed, one of the reasons that Michael Gove and Vote Leave did not want me as part of their campaign is they thought they were going to lose the referendum. And they thought the higher profile Nigel is, if we have a narrow loss, could give him huge electoral advantage for UKIP in the years to come. So they did their best to shut me out. They didn't succeed, Dan. So, Dan, do you get my point? I'm in this not for a career. I'm not in this for position. I genuinely believe in leaving.
Well, no, that's fine. I don't doubt you for a second, mate. I'm fairly sure you're the real deal on that front. I would just say that I think there's one other boon to a second referendum in that it legitimises the first one. And that's the thing that's really coming to
But what stops us going then for a third referendum, Dan?
Well, what I'm saying is at the moment there's a growing stack of evidence that the first one wasn't entirely the full ticket in terms of its legitimacy.
Oh, that's just not true. That is just... I mean, I do agree with one thing, Dan. You're right in one degree in that it's been admitted that all the different Remain campaigns had conference calls every morning. That actually was against electoral law. They may have overspent by 7 million. I do accept that point. But all the accusations, against the Leave groups, a little fine here, a little fine there, none of it really adds up, Dan.
I'm happy to wait. These things take time. We've got till the end of March.
You sound very relaxed. You sound very relaxed, Dan. I've got to tell you, a lot of the callers are incandescent with rage. It must be because you live in that beautiful county of Dorset. Dan, thank you for your call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's 7:46. Well, Dan in Dorset's got people thinking. Shazwell in on Facebook says yes. maybe the Chequers deal was a red herring for a second referendum. Others take a different view. If the Greening proposal is to be considered, only two options should be on the ballot paper. Hard Brexit or soft Brexit, as the third option is irrelevant since we already voted for Brexit. Yes, we did, but Parliament won't accept it, and that is the problem, and that gap between the people and the politicians that led to the Brexit vote is still there today. In fact, it may be even wider because there's been a hell of a lot of passion since the Chequers sellout. Anthony is calling from Staines. Good evening, Anthony.
Good evening, Nigel. I've got just little minor points I can make for my main point, if you don't mind.
Go on.
One is that this mythological next Prime Minister you keep on about doesn't exist, because whoever it is going to be torn apart by those hyenas and piranhas in the Tory party. They won't survive. They'll be torn apart. They'll be sacrificed on the altar of the EU.
Well, if May goes, someone wins, Anthony.
Yes, but it won't be much of a prize, will it? Because if it is Mogg or it is Boris, they're not. It's going to be a bit like Icarus going up to fly up to the sky, and his wings are going to melt and crash to the ground. Because the majority of that Tory party is Remain. Majority of Parliament is Remain. And that's my little first point.
OK, go on.
My second point, before I get to the main one, sorry to be a bit greedy, is Boris, I think, has to come back in. Because he got us there, because Boris, everyone was waiting to see what Boris would do.
Yep.
The world frankly stopped. He has a responsibility to see this thing through in some role in government, if perhaps as a minister without portfolio. He really has to clear up the mess. Not as Prime Minister, but being there, right in there.
Well, he's just resigned from the government because he can't live with the Chequers sellout. He wrote a piece in the Daily Telegraph this morning, which I sort of hoped he would use to say, right, I intend now to run for leader. He hasn't done so. So, apart from being leader, Anthony, it's tough to see what exactly he can do now, isn't it?
Well, I think he's got to get in there. If it's not Mogg, she's got to make concessions on either side, bring them in. But if I could get to my main point, if you don't mind.
Well, it has to be very quick, Anthony. I've got loads of calls, but go on.
Yes. No to Greening's idea of a referendum, because that is just a shill for Remain. That's her cunning plan.
Yep.
No to that. But yes to a referendum on what I call the Swiss option, on EFTA Light, which gives us access to the single market, which keeps us out of the customs union, and gives us quite a good set of ready-made trade deals.
And would Brussels agree to that?
I don't think they've got any choice, because they want us in. They want the dosh. I think in the end, Brussels is going to cave in. Really, we should be calling the shots.
Well, we should be, and we've got some great cards to play. We're not playing them. Anthony favours EFTA. Thank you. Robin is calling from Whitehaven. Good evening, Robin.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, is she right? Is Greening right? Because I think she is, when she talks about the potential for a deadlock Parliament.
Well, I think we've got a deadlock Conservative Party at the minute, and that's where 99% of the problems come from. The Tories have been fighting this fight for the last 40 years, and every now and then it rears its head, and this is what we have. Now, I've got a suggestion which would unite the country, and it would get rid of those MPs out of Parliament who don't want to follow the will of the people. It would unite Labour Party, it would unite the Conservative Party in their own respective parties, that is.
You're not a magician in your spare time, Robin, are you?
No.
I'm waiting for this.
All they have to do is Theresa May call a general election, and then each member of Parliament can go back to their own constituency and say, vote for me on whatever proposals our MP has got. And if the constituents aren't happy with the MP's proposals, if the constituency was a big Leave voter, obviously that MP who's not following the will of the constituency will be out.
But the trouble is, Robin, people vote on party lines, not for candidates anymore. That's the difficulty. I mean, most people, Robin, don't even know the name of their MP.
But the thing is then, Nigel, is each party will have to make it very, very clear what they're going to do.
Right. Well, I tell you what, Robin. I tell you what. I've got a better idea. Right? I've got a better idea. Maybe we do need a general election. Maybe we do need the people to sort it out. What about what about, they say, in Parliament one day, right, all those that support Leave sit on that side of the House, and all those that support Remain sit on that side of the House. Please form new political parties, fight an election, and then someone might win, Robin, and we know where we were.
Well, you know something, Nigel? It wouldn't, at the minute, it wouldn't put it past me.
I was joking. I was joking, but I do think that if May presses ahead with this Chequers plan and gets anywhere with it, I do think the potential for the Tory party to split is there and is much more real than it's been at any point in my lifetime. Robin, thank you. We're all grappling around for the solution. I do accept, by the way, the criticism that I got from Anthony and Staines that my Leaver Prime Minister taking over from May, yes, they would have a very difficult time in their own party. They'd have to act and move very quickly, but I still believe that is the most likely route to get the Brexit that people voted for. Jamie is calling from Chester. Good evening, Jamie.
Hi, Nigel.
So, is Justine Greening right?
No, and I'm a Remainer. A referendum with 3 options sounds absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
The problem with this is that, you've already touched on it in the last hour, is that this has to go through Parliament.
Yes.
Because ultimately, and I appreciate Remainers have raised the advisory point for other means in the past, the point of this referendum being advisory is that it has to be affected by Parliament. And Parliament has to do it. Another referendum is not going to help that. But there is an elephant in the room, of many elephants in the room on this topic at the moment, with this referendum topic. And I think it's also a problem with what you suggested as the way forward, which is that there is not enough time for any of this. A referendum would take 4 months to get primary legislation through, or so.
Yes, it would.
You just don't have enough time to do it. And with respect, I don't think we have enough time to do what you suggested either.
Well, I disagree, Jamie. I'll tell you why. Because for most of August, Monsieur Barnier will be sunning himself on a beach somewhere, and the board of the Conservative Party could concertina in the time it takes to have a leadership election. They could get this done and dusted within the month of August. Now, I do accept time would be tight, but I think it's possible.
But then whoever is the new leader would have to go on and do more negotiation. They'd have to prep themselves on that. They'd have to have their team in place to do that and do it effectively to the point where they could, well, I appreciate you say that whatever they get will not be accepted. I understand that, but they would still have to do it properly. The reality is, I do think it has to go through Parliament. I don't quite see the route to doing that, because I think May has made such a horrific hash of parliamentary process more than anything else at this point. But really, at this point, I don't see any other option other than Article 50 being extended. And I know you hate to hear that. I know you hate.
It's near the end of the show. I need a drink badly. I mean, the thought of Article 50 being extended and the agony going on for years, Jamie. I mean, we can't live with this, can we?
I don't say it as a Remainer, saying, I want to frustrate the
Do
president.
you know, Jamie?
I don't see any other way forward.
Do you know, Jamie, I can see a very major crisis, bordering on a constitutional crisis this September, and the next push from the Remainers will be the suspension and delay of Article 50. So I do get your point. I thank you. Matthew from Chiswick, you've got 30 seconds.
Nigel, so I'm a Remainer.
Yep.
And but actually, I'm in full support right now of a no-deal Brexit, because the biggest threat to our country right now, in my opinion, is not a soft Brexit or anything else. It's the division that exists in this country at the moment.
Okay, and it needs solving, and we need to move on. Matthew, I thank you. Time has run out. I let Matthew on because he said he's pulled his car over on the A4. We thought we'd do the nice thing to him. I tell you what, this one's not going to go away. A 3-option referendum is not the solution. I'm not even sure the Electoral Commission will allow it. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow night at 7. At 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you.